Good morning and welcome to my little, or not so little corner of YouTube. It used to be little when it was just me talking to myself, but I'm ever so grateful that over 830 now, I think, of you have decided to subscribe and join me because you like what I'm doing. So I appreciate you very much. And I say good morning because it is morning here in the United Kingdom still. It's close to 11 a.m. And I've been slow getting to this today. It's one of them headache days. I seem to be getting a lot of them at the moment. I think it's because the nights are warmer or the hot flushes have started again and I'm not sleeping as well. And that can have a knock-on effect. But it's the headache's beginning to lift. I'm beginning to be able to think a bit better perhaps, or speak a bit better. But I did spend some of that time doing some slow stitching, starting some slow stitching. And I said that slow stitching is really just about meditative creation. It's just allowing the stitches to flow onto the fabric you're working with and just seeing what happens, creating, I suppose it's the equivalent of making mark making, but on fabric instead of on paper. Except with me, it has to be a bit more. So what I've got here is what I've been doing. I'm using a piece of felt. It's not the best felt. It's quite thin. And it's sort of crafty felt, but it's okay. The top has got, I found this is what I used to do, and I'm gonna do it again. I can't find my mixed fibres that I used to have. They may be where I'm not looking, but I will find them or I will order more. And I needle felted these on the top of black felt. I think this is silk. Real silk won't be finding its way into my stash. But there's some amazing fibres out there in colours. I've got plenty of colours of felt tops I can use. But there's just something lovely about this one. It's because silk has got that slight sheen about it. But I like the way the black shows through. And I've just added some stitching. You can see it's catching the light. I've used an iridescent thread here. Here I've used a pale blue metallic thread because I'm picking out the blues and greens that are in the topping bit, and over here just some matte, well, it's not entirely matte, there's a slight sheen to it, embroidery threads. I'm basically just running back stitch, nothing complex. Oh, I've put some stitches down the edge here, and I'd like to do something over here, or I could trim it. Oh, this is gold leaf that I laminated. In fact, I laminated a lot of different papers and things like Angelina, the equivalent of Angelina fibre but in sheets. This is iridescent plastic that when you heat it, it can change colour. You can iron it or heat it with a heat tool, a craft heat tool, not one that's used for do-it-yourself, that's too hot. And it will fuse together. But I laminate it and you get this lovely iridescent see-through. It's like making custom sequins, or sequins you can't buy. And the gold leafing here has got a lovely texture to it as well. And it's not real gold leaf, it's it's actually very thinly hammered copper. And I've just used some beads to attach, to put on the top of the holes so that I'm not pulling thread too tight and ripping into the thin laminate. And I still have laminating pouches and stuff, so if I get back into this, I'll make it again. But I quite like these. I can't help the bit of sparkle and shine, can I? It's very lurid green, this background felt. It is what it is. I'm getting back into this and the mindset I used to have. But I'm thinking about some mixed media and but also using patterns. So I was looking through my stash of coloured papers, and I have many, trying to find paper that this sits well with. It doesn't sit well with this, but it might. There's a little bit here where it's got that hint of green that I could use perhaps as a little bit tucking out. I don't know yet, but it's not right. It doesn't look right to me. But I found this one, and I rather like this, especially if I pop this over the green bits. It's okay, but over that yellow bit there, I do rather like that. Let me pull it down so you can see it all entirely. So if I pop it round sideways, you'll get a better view, won't you? Because everything's landscape and I tend to work portrait. Yeah, so cameras are really a good idea for me. But I think that looks really nice where that over that yellow. Not so much over this, although it could work, but I quite like it over the yellow and the orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly mark where I'm going to put it with pencil. I do want patterns to go underneath. I want this to feel, I don't want a frame. I want a background thing. So with no further ado, let me get to that. And while I'm just putting some pencil marks around this, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's subscribed. I've already done that because I noticed I'm well over 800 now. And I'm ever so appreciative of the fact you've taken the time to click that button because you like what I'm doing. And that's absolutely amazing of you. Thank you so much. And if you keep returning here and you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please consider doing so, as it is completely free. You don't have to pay a thing for doing it. It just means that you support what I'm doing and gives me a little boost when I see the numbers climbing up. It's go, okay, keep on going. And it's also lovely when, you know, it's just one of those nice things to do. And it lets YouTube know that you think my channel's worthwhile, and then YouTube will share it with other people. Same if you give thumbs up. So just by doing those little things, you're doing a hell of a lot to help me and get what I do out to other people. So I'm ever so appreciative of that. So thumbs up, subscribe, like and subscribe, as they say. And they're completely free to do, but it's something that is absolutely priceless to me, in the meaning of priceless, meaning so valuable you can't put a price on it. Not worthless. Okay, so I've now put a pencil border in, and that would be just a bit. This would be right on the edge of the border, and I do want this within the border, so I'll just erase my pencil lines and I'll just pop some more in as a rough guide. And I may back this with some other things. I've got some lovely fabric arriving today. Not huge pieces, but you can get. I've always known about quilting fabric, but I didn't realise the range of things you can get these days. So I'm quite excited about this in a strange kind of way. Now I think I've got a sneaky suspicion this is Neocolour 2 as a background, and I don't think I've gessoed it, but I'm going to see what happens. In fact, I can't remember which one's Neocolour and which aren't. I've just refilled my fountain pen because I'm not really using my fountain pens oh, excuse me, much at the moment, so no, I won't risk using them on this. I need to do a test on a smaller piece of paper. So fortunately I dug out some microns, so I've got a PN, which is a plastic nib, and I've got an O1, and I just thought it might be nice to add some patterns around here. I have found, I was looking on tangledpatterns.com before I hopped on here, and I found this pattern. I haven't seen this one before, but it does date back to, I think it's 2018, and it's pronounced Oh Dear, but it's spelled O-D-I-R. And I'm wondering whether I can make use of this because it's got it's a wavy zigzaggy pattern. Let me get a piece of scrappy paper. There we go, piece of scrappy paper. And I'd like to use it in here. So it starts like this, and then in each one of these we're going to put something like this. Now this is my kind of version of it, because I'm not going to draw bits in and so on. So, because can be a bit of a lazy mare. But it's a nice way to get these kinds of ivy leaves like this in a chain. It reminds me of patterns you might see in medieval manuscripts. I really like that, actually. Now, whether I use it or not, it's called Oh Dear, and it's by Sue Schneider. She's done the deconstruction of it and the naming of it. So, so I quite like that. There are various alterations. If you look on tanglepatterns.com for it, you'll see some there. But perhaps not today. Today may not be the day for me to tackle something entirely new. I've got lots of... So if I have a look at this, I want to pick up some ideas from this. So I've got a square here with a circle in the middle. Perfect. I do love patterns like that. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to start with something that will go right the way underneath, perhaps. So if I start here-ish, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. It's going to be difficult because I'm going to be working lengthways here. Right, okay. So I've come in most probably about 1 centimetre from where this will be, and I want to do about the same the other side. So I'm going to create a broad panel that goes behind this top to bottom, and I am going to split this into 4 sections, I think. I was thinking of doing 3, but I think 4 will be fine. My lines are a bit wobbly. I'm a bit wobbly today. And I'm going to create squares. But as I'm going to be hiding this behind the panel, I only need to go a little way in. And I want the appearance that the panel this pattern continues underneath. Excuse me, I'm snotty as anything today as well. So that should be more than enough. So if I pop it on, you can see, and I'll have a glimpse that the pattern carries on, but I won't be able to see it. And then here I'm going to do the same kind of thing, except I'm going to start from this end, because I always think it's quite nice to have a panel that has a nice full square at the bottom. And they're roughly square shaped, they're not exactly. I'm going to enjoy the way the colour, the background shows through these patterns as well. I really have and am enjoying this kind of slow stitching. Let me just check, where's that going to fall? See, that falls on a whole square and I didn't really want that, so perhaps I'll draw one that's a little bit less than a square and one there. And I may trim that a little bit because that's what scissors are for. And I've got enough space at the top that if I take a little slither of that off, then there. So I've got partial squares, top and bottom there. That's nice. Yeah, so I'll work with that. Now I'm using a piece of my slow stitching for this. You could use a photograph, a picture you've cut out of a magazine, something like, I used to get cards in packets of cigarettes and tea and things like that that are quite pretty. You'd have to adjust the size. But I just think it's it's something a bit different, it's a different kind of project. I think I've done things similar. Well, I know I have, but perhaps not quite in this way. So I said I wanted to take inspiration from these. So I've got the squares and I am going to put circles in the middle of them. But what am I going to do with these circles? Because when I do this, my thoughts automatically go to well. And well is one of my favourite patterns. I do have to say that. And I have to admit, I haven't watched the May set of patterns from or videos from Zentangle on variations of well. May was Mental Health Awareness Month across the world, and just didn't get round to watching them. But I gather there's some nice variations on that theme there as well. So I've got that lot. So I'm trying to think. I could do well. I do love well. And I do love it where it makes those lovely curves. Yeah. Yeah, I could do that. Or I could do buttercup. No, perhaps not. I'm trying to think what other patterns there are that use that central circle, because it is something I want to use. There is a pattern, I can't remember what it's called. If I go here, and you can do it on a regular grid or an irregular grid. So if I do it here, it's where we create essentially 5 petals around this central region. And in other words, you draw 5 lines. You don't let them connect, but on one side of the square you're going to need 2 lines, and then you can join them up so they look a bit like flowers, like so. And I think that could be quite nice and something a bit, you know, a bit different from well. I'm sure it's got a name in the, you know, it's a tangle pattern, but to be honest with you, I don't know what it is. Or if that's where I got this idea from, even. It's something that does crop up with me from time to time, this kind of pattern. I do like it. It's that kind of randomness you get. So just finished doing that. The corners of the squares get rounded as well. As you turn these into like rounded petals, as if you've, you know, arranged a lot of square-shaped flowers together. It almost looks like a crazy paving path as well. So if I zoom in, let's hit the right button for zooming in. That's the zoom in button. There we go. Check in there. So I haven't got much of a space here, but that's fine. But what I think I might do is I'll swap to an 01 pen and just start to create these like so. So 5 lines, and then you round the ends of them, or weight the ends, create that little V shape on the ends that you then, you know, curved sides. If you want to, you can run along the line to do this. There's a couple of ways of doing this. So you can either create those little V shapes and then round the corners. So I'm going to start here with lines that don't touch. Oh, I've got 6 lines there. Does it matter? Or you can go around along the length of the line and just curve upwards in that kind of way. I vary it because I get bored doing the same thing. My brain suddenly wonders, what am I doing? Am I doing this? Am I doing this the same way as everything else? So I do tend to swap round depending on how I feel. So that's quite nice. You can also round them around give them a curved shape. So we're creating curved or triangular shapes, or not all of them are triangular, but you know, round corners even on the petals. and it creates that finished kind of look to it. I'm not going to worry too much if I've got, in this particular one here, I've got 6 petals. It is what it is, it happens, and as sure as eggs is eggs, I'm going to do the same thing somewhere else. And in the grand scheme of things, it will just be part of it. A bit like 4-leaf clovers. And clover leaves are usually 3-lobed. You try finding a clover leaf with 4 leaves on in a big patch of clover. It's quite hard because it just blends in with all the others, even though it's only got 4, because it's got an extra lobe to its leaf. I spent hours as a child looking for them, especially when we were sent out to pick clover for the rabbits we had. Don't come back till you've filled this big sack, each of you. Okay? My mother was very good at getting us out the house to do things. You know, this used to be kids alone, no adults. It was back in the late 60s, early 70s. Times were a bit different, I suppose. Well, I don't suppose, I know they were. School summer holidays, you'd often get up in the morning, come downstairs to find my mother had already got up, had made a couple of big plastic carrier bags full of sandwiches, jam in one and bovril in the other. Bovril is a beef extract, and it's a thick sticky paste. It's very savoury from what I remember, because, you know, used to eat it because I wasn't vegetarian then, didn't understand what it was. And it made quite a savoury sandwich. It was relatively cheap as well, because I'm one of 6 children. And the other one was full of jam sandwiches, or jelly for you Americans. In Britain, jelly is something else. And some big plastic bottles of squash. Cordial, I suppose you could call it. Non-alcoholic cordial, of course, orange squash usually, or lemon and lime, or whatever happened to be there. And by big bottles, I mean huge, you know, like gallons, because there was enough there not just for us, but for all the friends and hangers-on. And whether I wanted to go out with them or not didn't make any difference. I was sent out anyway. So I'd have preferred to stay home in my bedroom, reading or drawing or whatever. I did. And the instructions were, I don't want to see or hear you until the street lights go on. So that, you know, or until tea time, depending on what mood she was in. So sometimes there was extra food, so it was sort of like, don't come back till you're hungry, which for my brothers was a permanent state for them. They were always hungry. Well, one of them was over 6 foot tall when he was in primary school. And he used to go to the local pub and have a pint of beer at lunchtime. In primary school, this is when he was 10, 11 years old. Yeah, I know. He was a bit of a swine like that, but he used to do it and he used to get away with it, the cheeky so-and-so. Funny, he was a pub landlord for quite a while. But I guess it made him aware of all the things that people would try and get away with. And he also allowed the local teens in a town where he had a pub to come in and play pool, but they could only have soft drinks, so non-alcoholic drinks. And as long as they were well behaved, they could stay there and play pool until, you know, they should be home really, time. And the theory that if they were there doing that with an adult watching over them and they were being well behaved, they weren't out on the streets creating problems. So yeah, so this used to be a regular thing with my mother. So go out and don't come back until it's beginning to get dark. or until tea time. As we had dinner at lunchtime and tea at dinner time. So, yeah, tea was the evening meal. But in the house, meal time's actually quite flexible. Well, flexible. Not flexible, they were constant. My brothers, anyway. There's one of them, the youngest one I told you, used to come home from school and he used to make himself what he described as a light snack before dinner or tea. And his idea of a light snack would be basically half a loaf of bread with, a packet of bacon or a packet of sausages fried up. And he would make bacon butties, sausage butties, and he'd eat all of that himself. And then an hour or so later, he'd have a full dinner with everybody else. And that was my brothers. All of them were the same, actually. They'd all do that. As they came in through the door, he'd throw some more in the frying pan and cook them more up. I could never understand how they did it and stay so thin. So I only had to look at food and I'd put several stone on. It's a full-time job, I guess, keeping them fed. And not surprisingly, they're all over 6 foot tall. Well over. Our father was about 5'6", maybe. 5'5", 5'6". I'm about 5'10" or so. And my father could fit under my arm. I stood up, looked down on the top of his head. Used to give him shiny reports. Not weather reports, reports on how shiny his head was. So he was bald on top. But yeah, so I'm quite tall. I'm the tallest of the girls, for sure. They're my two sisters and my half-sisters, really, sort of. It's complicated. It's really complicated, my family. So I'm just going to do this one more here because I've got a start of this pattern and I'm aware that things can get, it doesn't take me too long to fill a panel in. But I'm also aware I'm telling stories as well, which is fine. My brothers were incredibly rambunctious as well. Loud extroverts, over the top about everything. And, and I'm not. So there we are. So that's what, if I zoom out, pick the right button. There we go. Then you can see what that's going to look like on this particular panel. And I think that'd look nice going behind it. But then I've got space on either side. On this side, I think I want to find a pattern that will pick up these stitches on the edge here, which is they're just straight stitches. It's not running, but it is a kind of running stitch, but it's not in one direction. They're going sort of like perpendicular to the direction of the pattern there. So I'll have a think about, I'm going to, before I do that, I am going to pop an edged border here, and this I may actually fill with gold later on, because those then would pick up the gold on the slow stitched panel. Ooh, that's well wobbly there. Luckily it'd be mostly underneath the panel. And I think these central bits, I'm tempted to put gold in them because the gold would go with that. But the beads I've got are this lovely, you Can't see it very well, but they're sort of like a green with a hint of blue iridescence in them. They match these colours quite nicely. So I'm quite tempted to put those colours in the middle. Or perhaps I'll use that for the edges and put gold in the centre of the flowers. That would make a bit more sense, wouldn't it? Okay, on the side, I want those kinds of long, thin lines. And I could simply just draw those lines in. But I would quite like to have a kind of pattern involving them. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to draw in a kind of wavy line, just as a guide, and I'm using pencil for this because I want it as a guide. And I think I may just draw straight lines in and got a bit of fluff on the end of this, and put a circle on the end. And that circle then also has the option of having a dot of iridescence or metallic in it. But I think the curviness will just give, instead of that very austere feeling that straight lines can give, you know, it gives that bit of an interest. But I also have an option of carrying on the dots if I want to as well. But they tie in as well with the beads I'm using. So I am trying to think about the kinds of patterns I'm using in that slow stitched panel. I'm making it so they sort of tie in together. Part of me is thinking that perhaps black may not have been the best colour to draw with, because I do have alternatives, but I've done it now and it's up to me how I make use of any additional colour. And if I have a look at my panel, I do have black there in the felt, so it ties in with that. And also, some of these colours are quite dark as well, so I think it works quite nicely together. A lot of this felt will disappear into the background once I've finished adding pattern and so on to it, so I'm not too worried. I'm also aware I may end up trimming this down, so I do want to make sure that on this side, you know, with these narrow areas on this side, I'm just going to complete the pattern completely along the edge, so that if I do trim this down, or it does get puckered up as I do stitching, that everything will just sit neatly underneath. So I think that'll work out quite nicely. I'll pop the panel back on now and just have a look at that and see what I think of it. Oh, that was a really messy circle. Still messy. So you get some odd things from me, especially on a Saturday, because I see Saturdays as my day to just do whatever I need to do. I tend to be like that anyway. But let's have a look and see how that's looking. Actually, I quite like that because it does tie in with these, especially if I decide, because I was thinking of adding beads to the end of these, and I definitely will now. So that will carry that pattern on all the way down. So I'm not going to do any more on that side. I haven't decided what I'm going to do on this side, but I don't think that's too much of a problem, because I can decide to do what I want to do on this other side. And I may actually finish this stitching off before I do anything else. So let me just add some more of these, because I'm beginning to go a bit skew-whiff here with some of these lines. They're not terribly straight, so where I've got bigger gaps and I want to fill them in, I can always do that with, you know, I can pop some short ones in here and there just for, that one actually would be right underneath the fabric, so just for that little bit of interest or variation as well, because, well, why the heck not? There, that'll be fine. And I can go back and look up here to where I've got some that are, like this will disappear right underneath the fabric. So a bit strange looking with these odd ones dotted in that are of different lengths, but I think that may work, especially if I add a few more in. So again, between these stitches, I did have the thought of using some of this iridescent to put longer stitches in. So this ties in over here, you know, I've got some of this over here as well. And so that would tie in with that and makes me think about doing it as well. Or means that I definitely will consider doing it. And if I have a look here, you know, I've got some that are barely sticking out, so. But it is what it is. And as I've often said, if you make a mistake or you do something and you think, oh, that looks out of place, just add more in and make it look like it's a deliberate decision or a deliberate choice to do these things. As you lot now know, it's not deliberate. Well, it is deliberate now, but it wasn't originally. But if nobody sees my video, they won't know. So we'll keep it a secret, shall we? But this is how things like new or variations on tangle patterns are, and anything really, flowers, leaves, anything. You draw, you make an error, but you keep repeating that. I'll say error because you think it's an error, it's a misstroke at the time, but then if you keep on doing the same thing or work with it in a way, then you end up creating perhaps something that's a bit new and different and something you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. So it's an opportunity to be creative as well as anything else. Now I am going to try to create some that are fairly close together here so that I won't have that space to pop any in. Have to there because the lines have gone a bit wonky and I've got a big gap. But again, that's okay as well because I've got a way now of filling those gaps in so they don't look so awkward. If I hadn't filled the gap in, now it would look awkward. If I'd left it as it was, it most probably would have just become part of the overall pattern. I'm glad I drew the pencil wavy line in as a guide. It makes doing this really quite easy and pleasant. And yes, before anybody asks, I will be either adding shade or some colour to add some shade here. Shading, shadows, to bring out some dimension. Now then, I'm just having a look at this and I can see that perhaps some of these dots I've put inside there, I've got some quite wide ones here, so I think I may pop some just here because they do look a little bit on the awkward side. But I think that would look quite nice now. So if I pop this roughly back where it's going to sit, I've got all of that there. So if I pull it down, you can see I've got that, and I've got this interesting edge going on. The nice thing is that I could fill this in the opposite direction with lines as well and dots, which is a possibility. And then I could get a nice straight edge here because it does look a bit awkward. So let's have a look at that. As I say, I might end up with something here where I go, oh, Angela, what were you thinking? That happens a lot. But if nothing else, I've got something that can then go into my sketchbook with notes on to say, don't do this. And rather than fix this down, this is why I haven't fixed this down as well, as if that I don't like the background that I create, then I can take a photograph with this on, annotate on it to say what I like, what I don't like, and pop it in my sketchbook so I perhaps am aware that I don't do this again. So I'll just do a couple of these quickly. And again, where I've got wider gaps, I may put some of the ones that I have in between. So, isn't it fab how something simple like lines with a ball on the end? What went through my head was in Terry Pratchett, there's a song that is sung about wizards, and it's called A Wizard's Staff Has a Knob on the End. So if I was going to submit this as a tangle pattern, I would call it Wizard Staff. And Terry Pratchett fans would get it. But I suspect there may be a pattern that's like this anyway. It's just mark making more than anything. So it's I think this could end up looking interesting. It's hard for me to see when I got my nose practically to the drawing. But let's have a quick look here. Oh gosh, excuse me. That series of sneezes came upon me all of a sudden. So I am getting, and here these ones will just have little dots there. So what does that look like? It looks interesting. It's creating its own little series of patterns, really. I'm going to put my scrap paper there. No, I'm not. I'm going to pop this on. And what I'll do is I will pop it on this way so that we can see how that will look behind that. Yeah, I need to put some here. They're looking a bit bare, aren't they, in comparison? There's some wide gaps there, so I'll do that. And thinking about this now, I could have created like wave patterns with these as well, couldn't I, instead of having them quite so random. Just a bit like what I've just done here. So let's have a look. So we're layering waves in this kind of way. Oh, excuse me. And it looks like we're going to end up doing this in every single gap to make it consistent. They are kind of following the shape of the wave, aren't they? Most in places they are. And in others I'm creating new waves almost. So that's a possibility as well, which is quite fun, I think. To create the wave within the wave. And they don't have to be a perfect wave. Again, it is what it is because I didn't realise that until just now. If I'd realised it sooner, I'd have done it sooner. I think that works quite nicely. Of course, I could have used my O1 to do these with, which would have given a different texture in the line. And would have added something to this here. But there we go. So I've got that. All right, let me just pop this on and put it on its side so you can see it. And then, so I have moved this down a little bit as well, so that it's just overlapping this a little bit. So I may have to trim some off this side, but we'll see when we get there. Excuse me a mo. Rustle of a tissue. So it's beginning to come together. I quite like the combination of this kind of shape. Again, it's, as I've said, what I'm trying to do is to get inspiration from my slow stitched panel to create the drawn patterned panel behind. And I may, you know, have a line somewhere where I put a quote in about slow stitching or about drawing or about art and use the letters as a pattern almost. I'll show you, let me see if I can show you what I mean. Let me get my lettering sketchbook. If I move my glasses out the way, I won't have it awkwardly. This is going to be interesting. So this is one I'm working on at the moment. I've got to the point where I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about this yet, because I'm not sure whether I want to put more pattern onto these sections. I've coloured them with Inktense, so it's permanent now, it's dried. I used a damp brush. But I'm trying to decide whether I want to add some more colour or whether it's just going to be shading to bring these sections out and so on. But you can see there's all kinds of words and things here to do with, it says going to try mixed media Angela style. It's lettering practice. So I've got things like textile art, collage, stylised line art. Creativity constantly evolves. That came out of my head. I'm not quoting anybody, that's an Angela-ism. Love a bit of whimsy, though there might be, yeah, you know, sort of like whimsical flowers, I suppose. Quite abstract stuff over here. Let's see what happens, slow stitching and so on. So those are the obvious ones, but here I've got, hidden in here is a question. Do I need or want fabric snippets? But it looks like it, unless you look at it closely, it just looks like a pattern. So I might do something like that as well. I'll see what happens. First, I need to finish that panel so I know how big it is and what it's going to look like and whether I'm going to, exactly what I'm going to do, what are the patterns. So this is quite fun. I'm looking at it now, I'm thinking, actually, I like the coloured background because it lifts everything else up, doesn't it? It sets the background back and the black and white stuff stands out. But I may draw some stuff on here using a pen or perhaps a brush and paint. I'll see. So that's always a possibility as well, but with this one. But I'm not too sure at the moment because it depends how this turns out. I don't want it much narrower than it is, but I need to decide what I'm going to do next. So I think that's the next thing, is to complete this. And we may not see much of this bright green showing through by the time I finished because I do want to run a channel of bugle beads. They're long, thin beads here, and something needs to go down here, so I may use another piece of this gold leaf homemade sequins. Something up here. I may use these lines here again, but go right the way across, but then I have to decide how big I want this. And or perhaps put some bugle beads this side as well. I'll see what happens. I haven't made my mind up yet. My head needs to be perhaps a little bit clearer. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I've done some tangle patterns with you. One I don't even know its name of, or even if it exists as a tangle pattern. If somebody wants to create it as one, carry on. I really don't mind. It's sort of like it's just a pattern. And I'll just say thank you if you stuck through to the end. And I hope I'll see you back again. I hope you don't mind me doing odd things like this. At least I haven't made you watch my slow stitching. Be grateful for some things. And I hope to see you again. If you've enjoyed what you see, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you have subscribed, I'm eternally grateful. And I know I've got comments to respond to, so thank you for those as well. And hope to see you again soon. Today's Saturday, the 4th of June. So if you're watching this Saturday or Sunday, I don't usually release videos on Sundays. I do need to get to inking templates in, but I don't think it's going to be today. I don't think my head's going to allow it. But I'll hopefully see you soon. So take care, be well, and above all else, be creative. Bye for now.